6:30. So I'm going to call this meeting of the Committee of the Whole, Administration and Finance for the Township of Edwardsburg Cardinal to order at 6:30 p.m., the date being Monday, July the 12th. And this is a sort of a combination of virtual and in-person meeting. I think there's a number of people maybe joining us. I see the treasurer is joining us by Zoom. Are there any members of the public joining us by Zoom? No, not yet, and I see that the press is not here tonight. So next item on the agenda is calling for approval of the agenda. The chair is looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented. And I have a mover, Councillor Hunter. Does he have a seconder? Councillor Cameron. Calling the motion on the calling the question on the motion to approve the agenda. Those in favor? Aye. Motion is carried. And the next item on the agenda, item number 3, is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Are there any disclosures here this evening? No disclosures declared. And so now I'm going to go to item number 4 on the agenda, which is business arising from the previous committee of the whole meeting. And before I deal with that item, I just have a question. What were the minutes of that meeting, which are now in this package, which is the meeting of June the 14th? Were those meetings approved at the council meeting? They were approved. Well, the fact that they were approved gives me some concern, and I'm going to refer members to page 3 of 47. And I don't know how to correct this, other than to try to read some. I'm going to call it comments of clarification into this meeting with regard to those minutes. And so on page 3 of 47, we have a number of paragraphs dealing with an OPP detachment framework. And I'm disappointed that I didn't catch these. But in the second paragraph, the paragraph reads as follows. It was noted that the township had for years maintained a contract with the OPP to circumvent the need for a police services board with great success. I'm going to stop there because now at that point there are 2 errors. First of all, we've never had a contract with the OPP, and because we didn't have a contract with the OPP, we couldn't have a police services board. So that's just, I'm making those comments for clarification. However, we have had success in our relationships with the OPP. And then that ends that sentence. Now, the next part of that says recent legislation will replace the current police services board. It will replace the current police act with the new Community Safety and Policing Act, which requires, and it's not, the word requires is not the right word, which provides that each municipality will have the right to sit on a detachment board. So those are the clarification comments around that paragraph. And now the proposal that this council supported was a proposal that came out of the meeting of the 5 mayors of Grenville County. And those 5 mayors constructed a proposal to present to the Solicitor General, which would recommend to the Solicitor General that Grenville County have 3 police boards. And that's not clear from this paragraph. So I just wanted those comments of clarification read into the minutes of tonight's meeting, because I think that there's a little bit of misinformation in those 2 paragraphs. So,
Mr. Mayor,
go ahead.
I thought that every year we would approve an OPP contract.
No, that's not true. We've never had a contract with the OPP.
So they would just send us
You just send us a billing.
the proposed billing, and we would, okay. My misunderstanding, and for some reason I thought we had, I know we didn't have a police board and didn't want a police board.
The only time that you can have, under the old police act, the only time you can have a police board is if you have a contract. And that's out now because this new act called the Community Safety and Policing Act 2019, that new act is now in effect, and they're moving now to implement that act by introducing these new boards. Now, having gone that far, I'll just ask the CAO. I believe it's correct to say that the Grenville proposal has been submitted, and they did acknowledge receiving it, did they not?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Right, and I believe in a communication from the CAO of North Grenville, who was in charge of submitting the proposal, that there was some communication back to Mr. Gary Dick, that indicated that the Solicitor General would be following up with questions to the municipalities and to Augusta Township. Is that correct?
That is correct. But
Right.
As of this time, we have not had any direct follow-up.
Right, but we're expecting that we will.
That is what we anticipate.
Okay, all right, so with those few comments of clarification for those minutes, is there any other business arising from those minutes? Okay, so no other business arising. I'll proceed to item number 5 on the agenda, which is delegations and presentations. And there are none this evening. Item number 6, discussion items, there are none. So proceed directly to item number 7, which is action and information items. And the first is the second quarter building report. Now, so first of all, to Mr. Grant, is the building inspector here, or I don't see him present?
Mr. Chair, it does not appear like the building inspector is on the Zoom call.
Okay, but I can say that the briefing note that he provides with his chart is quite instructive. And just for the record, I'll note that over the second quarter, there's been 59 building permits issued, including 13 for single-family residential units. And that represents $5,827,000 in new residential construction value. And that's compared to 2020, where there were 4 new residential building permits issued in the same period. And we're now up to, quoting again from his report, over the first and second quarters of 2021, there have been 26 building permits issued for new single residential homes. And I do believe that that is something of a record in the last quite a few number of years. Am I correct about that?
Mr. Chair, I would say it is.
And needless to say, the construction values over the period of the first half of the year, I'm just looking for the number here, total construction value over the second quarter, well, I'll just go to the total construction value in the first half. It looks to me like total construction value in the first half of the year is $50,900,000. Is that not correct? From the report, year-to-date line at the very bottom.
Yes.
$50,923,000 total construction value, and I think that's all different categories. So since the chief building official is not here, I'll ask my question to the CAO. When I'm looking at the industrial sector here, and I'm looking at the project values, I see the Q2 total of $3,873,000. Now, we know that we're issuing the greenfield permits on a sort of staged basis. So that 3,873,000, I think that would be the Prisbian permit, would it not? And that this report does not include any greenfield values? Am I right about that?
Through the chair, I anticipate that there's the potential for some staged permitting with respect to greenfield ethanol. So it may actually include a couple initial permits.
In that 3,000,008?
In that 3.7 or 3.8.
Okay, so we're still haven't seen in this report the full impact of the greenfield permits.
I do not believe so.
Okay. So are there any other questions with this report?
In the note part, it says that we have 59 building permits and 13 single residential units, representing 5.827 million. But on the chart, the residential project value is 6.679 million. So I don't know.
Sorry, so what's that again, no?
Well, the numbers don't jive. So that's all.
Where's the discrepancy again?
In the note, first paragraph,
Yeah,
there's a figure 5,827,213.
that's for the quarter, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
On the chart for 2021, the second quarter total is shown as 6,679,054.
now I wonder if you have a different chart than I do.
No.
No, so on page 8, Q2 total, residential project value is 6.679 million, for lack of a better. So that would include garages, decks, anything else that falls under which is
Over and above houses.
correct, and that's why the chart at the side just speaks to the
Houses.
to the houses. That's the discrepancy. So
Very good.
whatever that is, about 800,000 or so.
It's interesting to note, if I may proceed to continue. 2020, we had like 8.13 million in residential project value. So far this year, we've got 11.6 million. That's roughly 19,785,000. And I think just by rough calculations, if you look at the increase in the tax base, it's about $125,000 of increased tax revenue. So it's a positive sign, definitely.
What was the estimated increase in tax rate or tax?
Well, I mean, I'm just using the
Yeah.
tax rate from 19 or 820 or whatever it was I didn't look at the current one. But the total tax value would be about 125 to 130,000 additional.
Which we should see next year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully sometime in next year or early the year after.
Yeah, I think the assessment, and of course, this is not assessed value. This- yeah.
No, I understand that. Yeah. So, I mean, we're gonna get a little bump there.
Yep. The only problem is that the assessed value becomes taxable at the time that the occupancy permit is
That's
issued.
right.
And the occupancy
They can
permits
be
may not be
delayed
issued
sometimes.
until September, October, November.
Yeah.
Okay, are there any other comments with regard to this building report? I guess one thing, okay, sorry, Counselor.
Yes, I'd just like to bring up that nice to see our permit fees where they are. Where our project values are. When we made our increases with our budget, it's sure paying off for us if you look. The $79,460 of permit fees compared to the following year. I know we're up in project values, but still that increase that we made has helped us, I think.
Oh, big time. Yeah, for
It's
sure.
gonna be
Yeah.
nice to see. So,
Yeah.
well done.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
If there is a surplus in those fees at the end of the year? I know they're set based on the actual amount of time spent, costs spent issuing the fees and doing the doing the follow-up with buildings. If there's a surplus at the end of the year over budget, would that go into a reserve or just?
Yeah, that account, that reserve account kind of acts as a floating account. I think some later on in the agenda, we'll have a look at it, but what happens is we actually had anticipated that we might have to draw out of that account this year. But because of what we see year to date, it looks like we won't have to draw out of it, that there'll actually be a surplus that will go back in. It's a sort of a floater account. Okay, if there are no other questions, I'm going to move on to the next item on the agenda. And the next item on the agenda is the bylaw report. And there is a briefing note with regard to the bylaw report. And I'll just open the floor for discussion, if any. Your floor is open. Hearing none. Okay, Counselor.
Again, I'm just site visits, like the general inquiry there, for example, there'll be a page 11 of 47. General inquiry, W work order 1806. There's 5 site visits and nothing done. Well, it says it's closed, but was there any notices or any orders? That seems like a lot of visits for not having any orders or notices.
Okay, I see what you're saying. When you go right across the line, there doesn't make note of any notices and no orders and.
No,
And where do you get that it's closed?
the
Oh,
date
completed.
April 26th. I mean, we went 5 times, but there was nothing said. I mean, that's great. 5 visits and we got a couple other ones there on work order 1920.
Well, it looks like there was a work order issued though, eh? There was 1 work order issued, 1 phone call, and 5 site visits was enough to bring
Yeah.
the file to completion.
And another one is site visits, work order 1920 Johnstown. I think it's 7 visits.
1920.
Yeah, page 12 of 47. Again, 7 visits. I know that one's not closed, but then we have another one in Cardinal too, not closed.
Okay, so the one that you're talking about, 1920,
Yeah,
shows 1 work order, 5 phone calls,
7
5 emails,
7 visits.
7 site visits, 2 notices, and no completion. And what's the other one that you're looking at?
I was looking at the Cardinal one here. Again, 4 site visits.
What's the number?
Work order 1866 and 1247.
18 what?
1860, or sorry, 1860. No. 1843.
18.
Yeah, 1843. 8 visits. I just wish we could cut the visits down, and maybe, and to do the chair to the CEO, maybe that's the best way of doing it. I don't know. If that's the way to get things done. I know we have a couple that's, we've got 100 visits and we still haven't got it.
Well, at least with that one, we did get completion on June
Yeah.
2nd.
That's right. But I'm just saying, to the chair to the CEO, maybe is that the case, or to Rebecca? Is that the reality, is kind of keep going and inch by inch?
So through the chair, some people do take additional guidance, let's call it, and additional face-to-face communications rather than emails and phone calls with, you hang the phone up and 2 seconds later it's out of their mind. When our bylaw officer is consistently going to their house, they cannot always ignore him if he's standing on their front lawn. Other times, it's monitoring efforts. And sometimes where you see other ones that are still open with higher site visit numbers, it's because we're in the summons or order process and we are collecting additional information. So that way, whenever we do go to court, we have constant proof.
Thank you.
Would site visits always be actually going onto the property, or could it be a drive-by thing?
Well, it says site visit, so we assume that it's a visit, not a drive-by. Is that a correct assumption?
I would certainly indicate that that would be correct. Like, you know, there's nothing to say that the site visit isn't that the bylaw officer goes to the door, knocks on the door, and there's nobody there, but it would still be logged as a site visit, right, for tracking purposes.
Okay, are there other questions here? Councilor Hunter.
I don't know whether it's a question right here or not, but we have we're all aware of one place in Spencerville and there's one place out in Johnstown that the houses aren't in very good condition. In my opinion, should be close to being condemned, but who does that? Is that under our bylaw officer, or is that under a building inspector? What authority do we have to look into these places that look like they're ready to collapse, to have something done about it?
So through the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When you're talking about an unsafe building or remedy to repair, that would fall under the chief building official.
Okay, so I think Councilor Hunter is raising a point that I have some resonance with, because we don't always know what the situation is inside the building. Is it only the chief building official that can get in the door, or can the health unit not also get in the door at our invitation?
There certainly there would need to be reasonable grounds to allow entry into a home. I think that I understand, but it's a delicate spot when you begin to say that the home is not the individual's castle. That's
Yes, but if we had a property standards bylaw, gets us in the door. I mean, just because we're going in to inspect the inside of the house. With the yards bylaw, we don't have authority to go inside the building. We have authority to enter onto the property, and the bylaw gives us that authority to enter onto the property. With an occupancy and standards bylaw, we have the authority to go into the building and take whoever we want with us. We can take the health unit with us. We can take the fire chief with us. We can take the bylaw. The bylaw officer actually has the authority to enter. He can take the building inspector with him if he wants. But we don't have a maintenance and occupancy bylaw. So I don't know whether you want to pursue this or not, Counselor, but you know, I mean, I share the same concern that you share, in that I think that there are a couple of properties where we need to be inside taking a look because of the location of those properties, where they're located in the hamlets and the villages.
Do we not, through you to our CEO, does the building inspector, when it's obvious from outside of not being structurally sound, the roof or one thing or another, does the building inspector not have the authority to condemn that building or order that building brought up to code?
There are abilities within the Building Code Act with respect to that.
And I'm not as much where I can guess what the insides maybe look like. What What I'm more worried about is something coming off the roofs of these buildings, or they're collapsing and somebody off the property getting hurt with something coming off these buildings.
I'm the opposite. I'm more afraid of no running water, no plumbing, etc.
Yeah, well,
It's causing a health problem.
causing a health problem, right?
You know.
To get in, to get something done, they gotta fix the outside, but they gotta do something on the inside, so.
So
Mr. Mayor, this subject, how do you get around the Constitution?
Well, the bylaw is how,
Forget the bylaw.
No,
There's
no.
a constitutional right to not be unreasonably searched.
but,
No exception.
no, I'm sorry.
Read the
Okay.
Constitution, Mr.
You
Mayor.
can read the Constitution all you want, but the municipal act, once we provide ourselves with the bylaw, the municipal act gives us that power in the interest of public health and safety.
Well, you're challenged in court.
Yes, they can, but they'll lose every time.
I don't think so.
Maintenance and occupancy bylaws are in existence in the
Of course
majority of
they-
municipalities.
Of course they have been, but that means they're getting away with it.
Well,
Federal laws.
I mean, we can
trump
get into,
that.
we can debate constitutional law here all day, it's not gonna get us any place, but, I mean,
Well, just a warning, that's all.
yeah, no, I understand. And I'm not advocating that we have a maintenance and occupancy bylaw, although I have done that in the past because of the very issues that are being raised here tonight. And I mean, I think we're all aware of the situation that we're talking about in Johnstown. I don't have to go into any detail here, but we're talking about a situation where in proximity to a school. That's what we're talking about here. So,
Neighbors.
and by the way, earlier it was referred to about buildings collapsing. In the last year, we've had 2 buildings collapse in the township. Now, they're not houses, and they were not at the time occupied as residences, but in fact, they did collapse. Now, we introduced in this term, I think within the last year, maybe a little bit more than a year ago, we introduced our vacant and abandoned buildings bylaw, which was designed to give the building inspector and the bylaw officer the authority to deal with those types of buildings before the collapses occurred, and to deal with the owners of those properties. But I mean, those 2 collapses did occur, and neither one of those buildings has to this date been, I'm going to use the word, cleaned up. One is in a partial state of collapse with the roof, I would say 3/4 collapsed onto the floor below. And the other one is a barn, which is better than 3/4 collapsed, but still a wall or 2 standing, which could come over at any time and will eventually come over.
There's a building just across the road from the McEwen gas station, well, near the bridge there. That's been
That's
burned
one.
out, and, is that the one you're talking about?
That's one,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, I think, my worry is this. We can see from the previous report that our building inspector is very, very busy. I mean, he's busy analyzing requests for permits and issuing permits and doing building inspections, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, an individual can only do so much work in a day. My worry is that, are we, as a corporate group, are we providing the resources that are needed? Now, we haven't been asked to provide more resources, and I guess part of the reason for prolonging this discussion tonight is to encourage, if that's what the word needs, if that's the right word, if the staff needs more resources to deal with these problems, I think they've got to come forward and ask. But I don't think the problems can continue to be ignored. That's the point I'm trying to make. So I'm not getting any resonance with the rest of council or the rest of the committee, but I think it's something we should all be thinking about.
Does the inspector still work a limited number of days a week?
No, the chief building official,
Oh, yes.
he's a full-time
It's
position.
the bylaw.
It's the bylaw officer that's 10 hours a week.
So,
Go ahead.
thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to clarify, what we, as a civilian eye, may look at and say that it is unsafe to a point where it needs to be demolished or remedied unsafe, can be different than what a trained eye may come up with.
The
So
problem is we don't have the advantage of the trained eye. We don't have the advantage of the report from the trained eye to say, oh, don't worry about that. We don't have the advantage of that report. And so, you know, the problem remains here.
Well, is it not possible to use whatever powers we feel we have and look at the two particular instances that are raised by Councilor Hunter?
Well, I mean, I think the vacant and abandoned building bylaw gives us the power, but it doesn't give us the time. It doesn't give us the resource.
All I'm suggesting is that we have two instances that Councilor Hunter's referred to. Can we not just isolate those and deal with those two under whatever powers we currently have to the extent of those powers? And then if we see we need to reach beyond that, we should enlist, but based on our investigation of those two properties, then we should enlist the support of whatever agency or whatever beyond that we need to accomplish our aim, our objective.
Okay, so through the chair to the CAO, same question.
certainly, if those particular spots are provided to us, we can certainly look to do an assessment. Quite potentially, there may have already been an assessment done.
Yes, there may have, but we don't know that.
And through the chair, but with all due respect, those are administrative functions that the CBO may have already looked at and determined it's something else. And for him, he's on to something else. But we can certainly look at those particular locations, and if they can be provided at some point to me, I will ask the CBO to take a closer look.
I guess trying to clarify what I was intending to, the idea I was intending to put forward was that if the CBO has those powers and he reaches the ultimate level of his power, and it's still not a solved problem, that we then enlist the support of whatever group agency beyond him that we need to address the issues.
I'm understanding where you're going.
Councilor Hunter.
Well, I think sometime I can easily give her CBO the one. I think he probably knows the one I'm referring to, and we can have a discussion to see where maybe it could go. I'm kind of like you have suggested, Mr. Mayor. It doesn't look like our CBO is gonna, within the next year or more, have any break in work that he needs to do. Maybe council needs to be seriously looking at hiring maybe some part-time help and a junior inspector to work with him to help him out on this, because I think we can see in our graphs here, I think he's getting a little bit overworked.
Okay, so I mean, I'm just
I'm
gonna
just
let,
going just something that maybe needs to be considered along the way here. We may need extra help in the building department. I know we're not maybe quite have reached the level of building of the area in North Granville, but I think they've got 5 or 6 people in their building department back there. We're working with one building inspector that's doing a great job, but he was a retired guy that come back to help us out in the pension working here, and I think we're getting to the point maybe we need some more help from maybe just in Foley, just to field work going out and doing checks and keeping up with the building. We want building to keep pursuing. Contractors get very annoyed if they have to lose a couple of days while they're waiting for the inspection to come to get the go ahead.
Okay, so I mean, that's the whole thrust of this discussion. I'm not hearing others picking up here, so I'm about to move on. Are there any other comments on this? Go ahead.
Yes, to pick up on Councillor Hunter's, this is just an outside suggestion, but bylaw and plan and building are fairly close. If we increased our bylaw officers from, say, 10 hours a week to 15 or 20 hours a week, could he assist the bylaw or the building inspector officer in that way? Strictly a suggestion through you to the staff, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, and I think, well, I'll let you speak for yourself there. I don't understand the division of powers there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Some of the items that have been raised this evening are already being worked on with respect to next steps that I'd like to bring forward to council.
Okay, so can we let it go at that?
Certainly,
Okay.
yes.
Everybody comfortable with moving on? Okay, moving on then to item number 7C, which is the second quarter treasury and reserve report. And this report, there are quite a number of items here. The financial report as of June the 30th, the long-term debt schedule as of June the 30th, the year-to-date capital status report, the modernization funding report, and the reserve fund report as of June the 30th. So I'm going to take these in order. And the first report is the financial report as of June the 30th. And let me just have a look where we are. And that is basically page 19 of 47. So the chair is open for discussion here. Anybody have anything to bring
I'd
forward?
like, Mr. Mayor, if I might, there's a note that comes from the treasurer on the investment in Rideau St. Lawrence and the investment in the port, where there were adjustments made by the auditor, and we have a little bit of expansion on that.
Okay, as the treasurer is here, so if I could through the chair to the treasurer, can you just give us some discussion as to the rationale behind the auditor's adjusting entry?
Certainly through the chair, this same note was on the first quarter variance report. And it's just showing that at year end, the auditors do an adjustment to those equities on both the port and the Rideau St. Lawrence. So that's the change in equity that the township has in both those outside entities.
Right, and I think,
Well, did we buy more shares or
No.
something?
if I can,
No, it's an equity.
if I can just speak to the port one.
Yeah.
And I'll ask the treasurer to help me out here if I'm off track. But if I recall correctly, I'm just looking at the port one. So the port has moved from 37,552,000 in June 2020 to 41,157,000 in June 2021. So that's an increase of 3,600,000. And as I recall, when we had the grant from the federal government, and we did the work on the port wharf, that grant somehow gets taken into equity over the period that the grant was applied to, or I can't remember how that period is defined, but am I on the right track here, Madam Treasurer?
I think you're talking about something a little bit different. So basically, the township owns 100% share in the Port of Johnstown. So annually in their statements, they show a change in their accumulated surplus, and their accumulated surplus is our accumulated surplus. So in 2019 or in 2020, they had an accumulated surplus, or 2019, they had accumulated surplus of 37 million. And then after 2020's year end, they adjusted that surplus by the 3.6 mil. And because we own 100% of that, we show that as equity in that government business enterprise. With Rideau St. Lawrence, we only have a share of that, a smaller share, 11.2 or 9%. So the adjustment was only 27,000, our portion.
Same concept.
It's the same concept, yeah, different percentage of share in the equity.
Okay, so thank you very much.
The port had a really good year last year. Right?
Yeah, they typically do at least 3 million plus each year in terms of their surplus. Now, some of it, as the chair or mayor speaking to, that whole loan / grant bears into that surplus, and I'm not as versed on it, and I haven't looked at the statements in the last couple of years, but there is an adjustment based on that as well.
Okay, any other questions here with regard to this? So I have one under the asset list, and we have an inventory here, and it says inventory including land for resale. And our land for resale has gone from 285,000 in June 2020 to 278,000 in June 2021, which is a difference of 6,504.
Yeah.
So did we sell something for 6,504? What is the change in inventory that led to that?
Right.
Or
So the
inventory of all kind.
So through the inventory, so it's inventory like sand and salt and fuel and culverts and such, but it's also land inventory. So it's a combination of a couple of things. So there's just an adjustment to those asset accounts at year end, and that was the adjustment at 6,500. I only do adjustments at year end on those types of things like your inventories, your long-term receivables, or your equities. Those are usually done at year end. So I probably could have applied the same note as per auditors adjusting or year end adjustment. So it's a combination of not just land changes, but also inventory such as sand and salt. And so that's the net change to those inventories.
And following up on that question, do we have a list of land for resale with pricing beside it?
Not specific, no. Within the general ledger account that I'm accounting for, I could identify ones that are listed within that.
So we could create.
But I don't have that. Yeah, certainly I could identify the list.
I think it would be helpful to have that list and to know where those properties are. I'm talking to people all the time, and it's helpful to know. I mean, I know that we have some land for resale, but I don't know that I know it all or where it is, what we're asking for it. But I think it would be helpful to have a report of that land inventory. If we could get that, I'd appreciate it. Are there any other questions here? I just want to note the reduction in the taxes receivable. I mean, that's down 100,000 pretty much, more than 152,000 decrease in the tax receivable, increased collection efforts. I mean, that's a substantial increase in, or a substantial decrease in taxes receivable. Now, did decrease in tax receivable, does a portion of that 152 relate to additional agreements that are in place? Or are the agreements staying pretty much constant?
They're staying relatively constant. We have seen more and more people going on pre-authorized. So that gets, so for instance, we're getting more people lined up for having that come out monthly. So we're seeing, that receivable dropping more frequently throughout the year. And then as you can see, we also have a little bit more money in the bank as a result of the additional collections.
Yes, note that too. So other questions here? Okay, if there are no other questions with this report, I'm going to go over to the next page, which is page 20. And on page 20, we have the schedule of long-term debt. And appreciate getting this report. Again, appreciate the fact that our debt that's paid by others is separated at numbers 6, 7, and 8. And we can see who's paying off those loans. And then on the top 5 are the ones that we're actually responsible for from tax revenue. And we have a couple of those ending in 2022. Number 3 and number 4 are going to end in January and March of 2022. And then the next ones that are expiring are in March and October of 2024. So are there any questions with this report? Anybody have anything? And is the grader on here?
It's a couple of pages ahead. It hasn't been added yet.
So
Okay.
yes, the grader, we didn't take the loan out until July 2nd because of the holiday. So it will show up in the next quarter variance where I'll add that as a line.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions with this report? Okay, so that's page 20. So now I'm going to over to page 21, which is the capital project status report. And are there any questions here?
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
Yes, halfway down. The Johnstown drainage designed for Mary Street and Sapphire Street from County Road 2 to 2nd Street to begin in mid-May. Now, is that just what we heard from Greer Galloway? Because obviously there's no work been done. And are we shooting for this year, 2021?
Well, through the chair, I think the work has been done. I think it's been all engineering work, but to the CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So yes, Mr. Hawley was here at the last Public Works meeting, just seeking some clarification. So he's going to update what he heard from committee, and I just received an update that it won't be in time for the Public Works meeting next week, but we're still working on getting that finalized and looking to move forward as soon as possible.
Thank you.
So, but on that same, going up just a couple of lines there where we're talking about Spencerville drainage, and the note says scheduled for July 2022, and the expenditure to date is $4,324. That would not be the entirety of engineering expense, would it?
Through the chair, that is correct. That is not the entirety of that. And just noted that is the public meeting is scheduled for July 20th, not the 22nd.
29th.
Okay, now, I note that there's quite a number of these items on the capital project where there is, the status is not indicated. I'm thinking of, as I go down, the brush head for the high hole. It seems to me that we either approved that or it's, I don't know what the status is of that one.
So maybe if I could, Mr. Chair, we had a number of, we've had a number of personnel off over the last 2 to 3 weeks. And maybe if we could, maybe we'll look to update that over the next week or so with some additional information.
Well, that would save me a lot of questions, because I had a lot of questions beside some of these ones where the status is not outlined. Does anybody else have any questions with these? Councillor Hunter?
I just have one on our capital for our road paving and stuff. I thought it was supposed to be started by now. I don't see much action going on any place on it.
Through the chair, that is correct. The initial part was it was supposed to start end of June, if I'm not mistaken. It has not begun yet, and following up on that particular item.
Okay, which ones are those, Councillor Hunter?
All the paving projects that we put there.
Yeah, which ones are they here on the sheet?
First Street,
So partway down.
Ann Street, Judy.
Correct.
Which ones?
Go ahead.
So if you look partway down the page, you'll see Ann Street,
Yes,
Judy Place,
yes,
Commerce Drive, Rooney Road.
and then Edison was postponed, was it not?
Edison was postponed in First Street.
First Street was postponed?
Nope, First Street is gone.
Okay, so those are the ones that were, okay, so they're supposed to be still ongoing, are they really?
Yes, they just have, it just hasn't started yet.
Okay, and can you tell me a little bit about Latimer Road, which was the joint project with North Grenville? It just says awarded to Smith's Construction. So what is the status of that? I should wait for the next report, sorry.
That's okay. It would be Smith's Construction to apply a slurry treatment on that road.
And we don't know what's happened yet?
I anticipate that there is an update. I just am not aware of what that update is.
Okay, all right, so we'll get that in the next report, or in a follow-up report?
Yes.
Okay, so if there's no other questions with that one, then I'm gonna move on to the next report. And the next one is the modernization funding report. And I think that if I got my pages numbered correctly here, that'll be page 22 of 47, I think.
You also have a large copy as well, Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Oh, now, wait a minute, now, yes, okay, so I'm on page 22 of 47, and there is a large copy. Well, actually, mine are both the same size, I think. Yeah, they're both the same size.
Yeah,
Um,
bigger paper.
Okay, so are there any questions with this report? So from the chair, I asked the CAO today, Madam Treasurer, we had asked that a copy of one of these reports, these modernization funding reports, be sent to the MPP's office, the minister's office that provided this modernization funding. Was that letter sent? And the second part of the question to the clerk, I guess, is did we get an acknowledgement or receipt?
Through the chair, yes, it was sent after the first quarter report.
Yes.
And I received an unofficial confirmation that it was received.
An unofficial. Don't those guys answer us?
I received a phone call from old colleagues.
Oh, I see. And that's it. Okay, all right. Are there any questions with this? We still have, it looks to me like about $345,000 left in that fund. And if you look at the various things that we've been able to enable from that fund, I think we're using the fund for the purpose for which it was intended. Any other questions here before I move on?
One, maybe, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
is there any chance there's gonna be a deadline put on this?
We gotta spend it.
What's that?
So we gotta spend it. It's,
Yeah, but there's no deadline, is there?
The intention of it was to help offset reductions to OMPF, and they put it out. And, you know, the idea was to find some ways to consistently save a few dollars and use it, not to leave it forever. It's been there for a while. To find a couple of ways and start using it.
Well, I'm looking at our commitments in 2019.
April 22nd, we received the check.
Yes, and we made
So we did.
66,000 of commitment in 2019.
For 2.5 years.
And what did we commit? 2020, we committed 120, we'd actually spent 123 with quite a number of things there. And we've made some commitments in 2021. Actually expended 65,000 in 2021 on replacing the telephone system, for example. These are all things that I think we're setting ourselves up. Job site challenge, we put money into that from this source. I mean, I hate to spend it for the sake of spending it. Go ahead.
The reason I asked it, I'd hate to see with the deficit provincial government's running, all of a sudden they decide to, we've had it long enough that they want to take it back.
Oh, they will never do that.
Yeah,
I don't
I don't
qualify
know.
for others.
But why I asked is, I think we're all aware of the terrible internet connection here. Would this not come under this modernization fund? Could we not really push Bell? And it looks like we got quite a chunk of money there. We pay a little extra maybe to get it pushed forward. At least we get good internet connection. We use some of this money, but I think it'd be definitely be modernization, bringing our office up to speed here, that we could actually hold virtual meetings.
So through the chair to the CEO or the clerk, how are those discussions with Bell coming?
They're going, but not about at the speed of our internet connection right now.
That's not encouraging.
They won't get any
But
faster either.
yes, we will back on that.
It's terrible, by the way. I don't know how many of you have looked at the meetings that have by, you know, getting up on the website and looking at the meetings, but it is awful,
It is,
terrible.
So that shows up on our YouTube channel?
Well, I don't know if you call it YouTube. I go up on the website, you know,
Oh, okay.
whatever.
That's a
your link
YouTube
is.
though, isn't it?
Yes,
Hey?
Chair, we
It's YouTube.
get enough. of
Well,
it.
it's a link that Rebecca provides, okay? Go up on that, it's just awful. Cutting out, the audio's cutting out. You're getting situations where the video stalls and then cuts back in again. And you miss words. Volume is terrible from time to time. You know, sometimes you can crank the volume up, other times you can't. It really needs, it's almost, in my view, an embarrassment to put it up there. So I don't know what the problem with Bell is, or who your supplier is going to be, or what your plan would be, but. Yeah.
So that's an ongoing project.
Yes, it is.
Well, again, if there's a political dimension to that project, I'd like to know about it, because Lisa Severson tells me that Bell has a dedicated employee for municipal services. And that's all that this individual does.
Maybe he's like our CBO, he's very busy.
Yeah, well, you could be right, yeah. All right, if there are no other questions with that report, I'm going to go now to the next one, which is the reserve and the reserve fund balances as of June the 30th. And So turning to that report, are there any questions with this report? I don't see anybody putting hands up.
Interest would be earned monthly. It's showing in here, so it's allocated each month.
So is the interest updated each month or just each quarter?
No, the interest is allocated monthly.
Okay, and can you just, looking at the reserve funds at the bottom half of the page, can you just explain to me what happened to the HISA money? It looks like that money came out of the HSI, the HISA account, and then went down to industrial parkland. Now, that's what it looks like. So can you confirm that? And then tell me, where is that, that 2,250,000, where is it domiciled? Is it domiciled in our general account or is it domiciled in some other place?
So through the chair, back a couple of months ago, I brought a report to council with respect to the fact that the one investment HISA account interest rate had plummeted. So it wasn't making as much as what our RBC accounts are making. So we transferred that money over into the consolidated reserve account that's with RBC to make 0.7% instead of, I think it was getting like 1.165 or something like that at the time. So that's why we moved that over, so that we wouldn't lose some interest that we can gain on putting it in the RBC account.
Okay, but it's in the RBC consolidated reserve account. It's not in our operating account.
That is correct. It is not in our operating account.
Okay, and it's that consolidated reserve account that's generating these interest rates all the way down through that chart of accounts, is it?
That is true.
Okay. Everybody understand what's happening there? Okay, so staff has done a fair amount of work getting these reports together. Chair's looking for a motion that the committee received and reviewed
Mr. Mayor,
these, oh, sorry,
excuse me.
yes?
Before you make that motion, may we go back to 21 of 47, please?
Page 21 of 47.
Cardinal pool filter replacement, 73,500. Is that completed?
So through the chair to somebody, cardinal pool filter replacement.
So through the chair, that has not been completed yet.
Do we have it? I remember that we're gonna have problems maybe getting it, but I thought it was done, seeing that we're just sort of like borrowing time on that filter system that we have. That's why we wanted it.
I remember it was an issue at the time.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. I do not believe that has been received as of yet, but if the treasurer has some additional information, but I don't believe so. I'll have to follow up on that.
Okay,
So through the chair, no, I don't have additional information. I circulate this status report to senior management to update, and I'm going to have to follow up with the department managers to get statuses on these projects because it has not been updated. And I had unfortunately a short week with other duties this week, so I wasn't able to follow up before this particular report was added to the agenda.
Okay, so maybe.
We will get this updated and circulated.
Okay, Zach. Thank you. Okay, so so now again, the chair is looking for a motion to that the committee received and reviewed these 5 reports.
So moved.
Okay, I have Councillor Cameron moving and Mr. Robertson seconding. Those in favor? All right, so that deals with that. And And so now I'm moving on to, where am I here? The budget variance report, which is on page 24, begins on page 24 of 47. And so just a quick question, for the sake of clarification, in the briefing paper, on the very first paragraph, it talks about the background. The attached report is a summary of revenue and expenses for the period ending June 30, 2021, with a comparison to the second quarter of, I would assume that means 2020. Am I correct with that?
Yes, you are. Sorry, that is an error on my part.
Just a typing error. Okay, so now that explains that. So are there questions with this report then? I'm going to say I have trouble following the report because on page 26 of 47, where I see 2020 year-to-date actuals, I'm assuming that means 2020 as of June 30th.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
it does.
Yeah, and then where it says 2021 budget, I sometimes don't know whether that's the full year 2021 budget or the half year 2021 budget.
It is the full year, and that's why the percentage remaining indicates of the budget, what is the percent remaining of the entire budget.
Okay.
Your last column, which is percent, I can't even say it. Percentage remaining is the percentage remaining of the entire budget. So it's the value between the year-to-date and the total of 2021 budget.
Okay, so if you look at tax revenue, and this report is as of June the 30th, the tax revenue shows year-to-date 5,841,000, but as of June the 30th, we haven't issued our final tax notices.
And then in the page 24, there is a note that explains the taxation revenue. I believe I've had an explanation of this previously. Our
Yeah.
tax billing system bills 50% of last year, and that's all encompassing both county, school board, and township. So, and there's no mechanism for me to actually pull that down to a 50% level.
Yes, and I recall that explanation, and I did read it. As a matter of fact, I've got it underlined right here in front of me. Thank you very much for that reminder. Thank you. And it's only out by 3.73%, so it's pretty close at 50% of last year's rate.
Yeah, and as I've spoken to this particular point previously, is that the tax revenue will never change. I'm going to bill what we had set our rates at. So the amount at year end will be the exact amount that we budgeted. That number will not vary. There'll be no variance to that particular revenue line.
On the budget side.
On the actual side, budget and actual, because I budget a certain amount and I bill that same amount.
Oh, yes, okay, I get you. And then the difference is in whether it's receivable or not.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right. Are there other questions with regard to this report? I mean, I think the report speaks that we're
Looks very good.
we're very well managed here.
Looks fabulous.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, just compliment staff. Looks fabulous.
So are there any follow-up questions here? Otherwise, I'm going to move on. All right. So that's the budget variance report, item number 7B. I think I'd like to see a motion that budget variance report has been received and reviewed as well. So Councillor Cameron and Mr. Robertson again, those in favor?
Aye.
That's carried. All right, now I'm at 7E, which is the second quarter council remuneration report, and you see that report outlined on page 31. Are there any questions with this? Before I just go there, looking at the second paragraph of the briefing note, And so I'm reading the second paragraph, section 6A sub 8 of the bylaw states, all expenses shall be reimbursed upon submission of a completed and signed. And so there's words missing, it's not a full sentence.
Yes, the word form is missing.
Okay, so it's an expense form, right?
Correct.
Okay, all right. And so are there any questions with the numbers on page 31? And so if there's no questions with that, I'm moving on from that. Looking for a motion to approve that report, received and reviewed. Got Deputy Mayor Deschamps, seconded by Councillor Hunter. Those in favor? It's approved, or carried rather. And now at 7F, the Cormorant Control on OPG lands, the license amending agreement. And it didn't look like we were able to get very much in the way of amendments.
No, Mr. Chair, we were not, other than, I think, with respect to, it's moved from weekly reporting to annual report, although it has to be broken down weekly, so, not a great deal of movement.
And this is, I believe, what is it? It's a 4-year or
Yes, the agreement allows for amending agreements. So I guess technically, it could last for a total of 5 years.
That's on a yearly basis.
I know that the actual execution within the terms of this agreement is causing some angst. Has the fact that we weren't able to get any amendments to the agreement, has that been discussed with Mr. Courtney? Is he aware?
That has been relayed to Mr. Courtney.
Well, I think, due to the lateness of the time, we probably should approve this here tonight and get moving, but
The one question I have is that I saw an article, I don't remember, it's not very long ago, maybe a couple months back, where OPG turned back some of the land back to the tribes.
There are 4 islands that are going to be turned. They're not, it hasn't happened yet.
No, but there was notification of that. Are those lands involved in this map that's on page 46?
I would think so, because I think one of the
Adams, eh?
Prison Island is,
That island that's what we call Adams Island. Going back.
yeah.
Prison for sure.
Now, you have to remember that is just a proposal that those islands would be transferred to the reserve.
Yeah.
It hasn't happened at this point, so there's still OPG lands.
Okay, so how would that affect our contract if it took place?
Well, I would say that once it gets transferred to the reserve, it no longer comes under the terms of our agreement with OPG.
So would we negotiate with the reserves, or how would we do that? Well, do we have a plan? I mean, it doesn't, just because the ownership or the stewardship changes, doesn't mean the cormorants aren't going to be there.
No, that is true. Go ahead.
Well, it really only affects the one, the other two aren't in the one island, correct?
Yeah.
The other
That's
ones
only
are,
one, yeah.
the other ones are either.
Ingleside.
Yeah, they're further down.
That's right.
So, but it might make sense to, once, if a transfer happens, to consult with them and ask what their input might be on the former control.
Well, members will recall that we had a letter from the band asking us to raise any concerns.
Yeah.
And we did, but that's not one of the concerns that we raised. So are you suggesting we do a follow-up letter?
It might be, well, yeah, it might be worthwhile just adding that we've done active farmer
We've had
control on that
contact.
island and, you know, would they like us to continue once they take ownership?
Okay, well, we can follow up with another letter then.
If I can, just a couple of comments though. As per the agreement with OPG, I think that this agreement, while it may not be perfect and we may not get the adjustments the way we want, I think we should be happy that we have this agreement with OPG. It certainly stretches, the word stewardship was said before, it certainly stretches their environmental stewardship department in Toronto for sure. And I'm not sure that they love this agreement to begin with. So I think taking what is there with any modifications is great. And further that, I'd like to, comment on Mr. Courtney. He's done a fantastic job. I'm out on the water fishing a lot. There are small schools of perch again that we haven't seen in a long time. There's a lot of bait fish coming back and there's very few, but there's still a few cormorants, which is fine, but there's very few of them to be found in the area. And it's fantastic. The work that Mr. Courtney's done is fantastic.
And further to that, there's no more white trees.
Absolutely.
Not yet.
No, not yet. So any further discussion on this? I see that there is a recommendation associated with the briefing note. Are you moving?
I will.
So I have Deputy Mayor Deschamps moving the recommendation. Does he have a seconder? Councillor Dillabaugh seconding. I'm about to call the question on the recommendation. Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. Okay.
Just before you go on, I
Yes.
wanted to ask a question. There are little X's on the map. And are they locations where the cormorants have nests, or they didn't give you a chart to tell you what the coloring was or what the marks on the map? See the little X's on the.
Mr. Grant, to you, if you can, please. I don't understand those there's 3 spots, right?
Yes.
That is a fair point. I would have to follow up on that.
It makes sense that they might be locations where there were nestings, because if you go out in a boat on what I call Adams Island, and you go down to the southwest end of it, as you come out into the main channel, there's several trees that were infested, that were badly affected. So right where those X's are.
Oh, I see, okay.
So I would make the assumption, and I may be wrong, but I would make the assumption that.
Okay, so Mr. Courtney can probably help out Mr. Grant to identify what those X's mean.
That's what they were.
Okay, so that basically concludes that section. So I'm now on section or item 8 of the agenda, which is council inquiries and notices of motion. Does anybody have anything? Councillor Dillabaugh.
I have one, Mr. Mayor.
I do, Mr. Mayor.
Of August 3rd, 2021, at the next CDC meeting, I will be making a motion with a new bylaw permitting RV trailers for the occasional accommodations of guests, provided that detached dwelling exists on the property.
Okay, now that's in the existing bylaw. And I don't know whether you've seen the note that that our community development coordinator has presented or not.
Yes, I did.
Okay, so that criteria is in the
The question,
you know.
the question you mean on the?
I read it, so I can't remember just how it's phrased.
Through the chair, we did put together sort of an information item
Yeah.
with respect to that.
Yeah.
To sort of clarify that with respect to that, the intent is certainly not to be focused in on grandkids staying over for a night or two or anything of that nature.
But it's like that.
But I think, is the purpose of your, the thing that you're bringing forward, the motion that you're bringing forward, is the purpose of yours to ensure that where camping exists, it doesn't exist on an empty lot. It exists only if there's already a residential lot on, a residential dwelling on that lot.
That's right, okay.
So that precludes anybody setting up a camper trailer on a lot where there isn't already a residence.
That's right,
Okay.
and it will be limited to zones,
Oh, okay, all right.
R1s,
Okay, so that's your notice of motion.
that's right,
Okay, I hope you get some good help from the staff in putting that together.
yes, I will.
Now, are there any other notices of motion?
Yes.
Okay, so I got Councillor Cameron and Mr. Bradley.
Yes, it's not notice of motion, these are two inquiries that I'd like to make, and one is regarding the waterfront trail, which is being used by many, many people, and happy to say it is well accepted. To be quite truthful, the comments I'm getting are, where has it been all our lives? But anyway, it's there and it's being used. But there is a slight problem. That slight problem is called Canada geese and seagulls. And they're leaving deposits on the walkways throughout. And people are asking some questions about what can be done. Now, I was at a function a couple of weeks ago, actually on Canada Day, and a couple of the people that were at the function had suggested using a rope deflect about 8 inches off the ground on pegs. And they use it on their riverfront properties, and they say it works marvelous. The geese just do not cross it. I'm just wondering if we can do something in that regards over the next short little while to put it on a trial basis, even to see if it does work. My recommendation would be to do it on both sides of the trail. So that would keep them coming from the river or coming from the parkland onto the sidewalk. So if staff could look into that or give us a report as to why or why not that could be done, that would certainly be appreciated by not only the 7 of us sitting here at the table, but for the people that use the path on a regular basis. I'll go on to my next inquiry, and it was brought to my attention, unfortunately, just shortly before I left for this meeting tonight. And I've been informed that the township has been cutting a property, and the question is why. The property happens to be the African Honey Church, where it appears that our staff is cutting that entire property. I'd like to know if that is so, and why are we doing it?
So, through the chair to Mr. Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm certainly not aware of recreation cutting the African bronze honey property. There are certainly tiers along that Gallup Canal that are municipal responsibility. So, but I will certainly do a follow-up on that particular item.
Yes, for your information, Mr. CAO, I asked the very same question. I do know that there are tiers where I believe we do or did cut, and this is the entire lot.
The entire lot.
The entire lot, from Dundas Street right back.
I'll do some follow-up on that. And with respect to your first inquiry that was raised to me a few days ago, maybe several days ago. So that information has been relayed as a possible option.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
That solution works, by the way, because I've used it.
Thank you.
We have a liability problem there though. That 8 inches, man.
kids
Well, I
tripping over
used
it.
2 on mine, I had one around.
No, but you're not going, there's not public
No, that's true.
public people aren't, lots of people aren't going on your property. We got a lot of traffic down there. And I hate to see somebody in a walker not see it upside down.
It doesn't have to be tight to the pavement though. It can be 3 feet off the away from the pavement.
Doesn't matter, it's still 8 inches up.
Still something to trip over.
You darn right, it's 8 inches up.
That's true, that's true, but
I
it's,
mean.
Would
that's
you
all
rather
I-
have them walking in geese?
Well, maybe we can paint it white.
I don't know, there's been a lot of farmers have electric fences up on their own property, and get lawsuits against them because somebody ran across the field and run into an electric fence and
Yeah,
got
Yeah.
hurt, so.
You could probably mark it, if you put a little.
I don't know, I'm all
red-
for it. I mean, I see where you're coming from, but we gotta be careful too.
A little red, piece of ribbon, every so many feet along the thing, I don't know, but
Yeah,
I know it works. And, I had mine at 6 inches and another one at 14 inches because they eventually can get to the point where they fly, but for the vast period of the year, they don't cross it.
I can see it might work for the geese, I don't know about the seagulls, I was down there tonight, and seagulls were landing right on it, it wouldn't matter, there's a fence on the side of it, they
yeah, that's,
so didn't land on it, so.
I think they do that on purpose, really do.
Yeah.
well,
The landing,
yeah.
it's a landing.
Terrible.
strip.
We're getting several different discussions going here. I'm trying to pull it back. Does anybody else have any inquiries or notices of motion? I think we've left that goes to in the hands of the CAO. Yes, I had Mr. Bradley and then Mr. Councilor Hunter.
Well, Councilor, go ahead.
I realize that when we set our budget there, we agreed to pay Benson driveway there. We withdrew that off, and I think it was 100-some thousand that we budgeted for there, and we put over in the next year. And then we got extra money given to us through our gas tax that come in. We're trying to develop that Cardinal area there and make it really nice down there. And I just wonder if maybe we shouldn't consider allotting some of that money into that paving down there across by the Legion where you cross through to go to put the boats in and stuff. That paving is terrible down there, potholes and rough.
Embarrassing, actually.
Well, we've got a nice walkway in there and stuff with maybe think about paving that down there, and we had the money.
We gotta do it the right way, don't take out the grass out of there.
Okay, so just now I'm getting two conversations going here. So Councilor Hunter is making a point, discussion.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I concur with Councilor Hunter, 100%. As a matter of fact, this weekend, there was more trailers attached to vehicles. They were actually parked right up to the water treatment plant, where they normally, I've never seen them there. So we certainly do have to do something with the parking down there. And the original plan, of course, was to take all that grass to as far over, I think it was about 30 feet, which would allow some more parking. But Mr. Mayor, I do concur with Councilor Hunter that we do have to speed up something being done.
Okay, but we got two issues on the table here, and I don't want them to be confused. Councilor Hunter is talking about, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm just going by what you said. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're talking about replacing the existing pavement where it's so badly mangled
Right by the water treatment plant and right as you
come down the hill.
Come down the hill there, like our own vehicles got to go in there every day to the water treatment plant there. They're bouncing over that too, and along with the public coming in.
So that's one issue on the table, which is repairing that parking lot and repairing the remove, repair, replace the existing pavement. The second issue that you're bringing up is expanding the parking lot, the gravel parking lot. And I don't think we should get those two issues
Okay.
confused, because I don't think that we've had consensus on expanding the parking lot when it's an incidental type of thing. I mean, yes, we do get times when there are more trailers than the gravel will accommodate, and the guys go on the grass, but you know, it's only for a short period of time, and it's maybe only 1 or 2 days for, I don't know, but it's incidental.
Yeah.
So,
Mr. Mayor, my apologies. I thought Councillor Hunter was referring to the parking lot.
I'm referring to the pavement area and the, right, even when you turn to go by the Legion to go through by the boat ramp, there's
right,
some terrible rough
so,
potholes there.
so to resolve this issue, is there, I'm looking for further discussion, first of all. And if I don't hear further discussion, I'm going to say, I'm going to ask, have we arrived at any, I haven't heard anything to the contrary. Have we arrived at any kind of consensus to have the staff do some preliminary work to get us cost appraisals on what it would cost to repair that existing parking area? I think there's quite a large area there that could be scoped out and existing paving removed and replaced. But that's a staff function to get that done and get a price on it. So I'm looking, do I have a consensus that that's what we're gonna ask staff to do? I'd like to see a nodding of heads. Nodding of heads.
Sure.
I'm not getting that, okay, I
I'm
am.
just making sure that we actually have that money in the budget, that's all.
Well, we're not doing anything, we're just getting pricing at this point.
Right, which is why I'm slowly nodding my head.
All right, so I think we have consensus to have the staff do some preliminary work to scope out a project and come back with a pricing. Okay? Fair enough?
Fair enough, Mr. Chair. The manager of facilities, parks and recreation, and I did have a conversation on those worst case, those worst spots along that area. And we did receive a preliminary, but we will certainly look to make sure that we've captured all of that. But you're looking at about 50,000.
Okay, okay. That sounds about right compared to what's happening at the port.
150,
No, 50,000.
50 to do that?
That is removal of some sections, not the removal of the entire parking lot and road and everything and redoing it. That's taking those real poor spots out and replacing them.
Well, I hope it's not a half-patch job.
Well, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah. Have we got markings on the pavement?
Sorry?
Have we got markings on the pavement?
I'm not sure if there's full markings on the pavement or not.
Okay. Now I had Mr. Bradley next.
Thank you, Mr. My comment is in the form of inquiry rather than motion. At the June council meeting, a bylaw changing to at-large voting received first and second reading. It was scheduled to come up at the July meeting for third reading. The motion to establish this bylaw was passed at the Public Works Committee in June. And to my knowledge, the issue did not get, in my review of the video of the both the Public Works meeting and the June council meeting, the issue has not received very much discussion. There were some public commentaries at the June council meeting, but essentially within council, there hasn't really been a debate. There are pros and cons to both the ward system and the at-large system. And I just don't think it's been vetted adequately. But my inquiry is this, it's in two forms. Is it not the purview of this committee to review that bylaw? And secondly, why not let the people decide?
Okay, so it's gone beyond that now at this point. I mean, it did come up at that June meeting, and the June meeting did make a recommendation, and that recommendation went to council.
And the vote was not unanimous at the June meeting, and thus third reading could not be completed as our procedural bylaws states. So the third reading will come up at the July meeting and be voted on.
That's right.
And if it fails, it fails. If it passes, it passes. But, you know, historically to now, there's been very little, if any, discussion on the reason why, the pros and cons, and no public input. Public input is allowed, but only after the bylaws passed.
Well, I mean, I don't know how to address your inquiry, other than to say that, you know, there was notice of motion given several times, starting in February.
Yes.
And that notice of motion didn't catch any resonance with the public. And so when it came to the June meeting, I mean, it came to this table. I think the discussion was relatively quick, I'll admit, because I think the members of council had made their decisions, and that's the way the vote was carried out. So it's now in the hands of council. It's gone to first and second reading. It's in council possession, and it will come up in the July 26th meeting and for third reading, and what happens, happens. Now, we've had several people, just so you know, we've had several people at a couple of meetings try to bring this around about again, but it can't be brought back to any committee level because it's in the hands of council.
Isn't the just purview of this committee to discuss that bylaw?
Well, it didn't come to this committee, it came to the other one. I don't know how that happened, but it was on that agenda and got discussed at that agenda.
So we're operating basically, without any kind of parameters which structure our committees.
Well, no, there are parameters for what issues come before which committees. And I mean, I haven't reviewed those committee mandates in some period of time, so I can't speak to why it appeared on the PW committee as opposed to the admin finance committee.
It's certainly not an issue for public works.
Okay, and you know, fair comment.
Okay.
Are there any other notices of inquiries or notices of motion, inquiries or notices of motion? Okay, hearing none. I'm about to move on, and it's the mayor's report, and I'll be brief. So the very first thing I'm going to ask, and I guess it is more a notice of motion than anything else, but to staff, on the correspondence package of July the 5th, there was a long briefing note and a motion from North Grenville concerning the Emily project. And the Emily project is a project to assign 911 numbers to vacant properties such as farmers' fields. And it results from the fact that the girl Emily died from a farm accident on a piece of property that did not have a 911 number, and the ambulance could not find the location of the accident. And so this has gained quite some traction. Now, our council, I think, has passed a resolution to assign numbers to vacant properties. And I know that I've had a 911 number assigned to my vacant property at, it's now called 1512 County Road 2. So I guess what I'm asking is that North Grenville motion be brought forward for discussion at a committee meeting. And I think, again, now, is it at the Admin Finance Committee meeting or is it at the Public Works Committee meeting? I would say it should come to the Admin Finance Committee meeting. But I'd like to promote this Emily project a little bit heavier to see if we can get more farmers and people that own vacant properties asking for 911 numbers. So that's the first item. And the second item, just point of information for council. So this afternoon, Mr. Grant, Mr. Shaw and I met with Greenfield concerning the incremental increase in the water supply that they will require from the low lift pump station on Windmill Road. And so I'm just providing council with notice of motion that, or notice of actually information that now becomes part of the big Greenfield project. And there are a number of issues for us to decide, or staff to decide as a group, as to how that project is going to be handled. I'm not going to go into the issues that were identified today at this meeting, but as we go a little bit further in the investigation of what's going to be required, I'll identify the issues that have come up and we can have some discussion of them here, although depending on Greenfield's stance, there may not be a lot for us to do. So that's my report. I'll answer any questions if there are any, and I'm moving on to item number 10 on the agenda, which is the question period. Are there any, no public to ask any questions? No press to ask any questions? Nobody in the gallery to ask any questions? No questions? So item number 11 is a closed session. We have no closed session here this evening. And so if there's nothing further before the table, the chair is looking for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Cameron moving. Does he have a seconder? Mr. Robertson seconding. Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. The meeting is adjourned at 8:11.